Markos Kounalakis is a foreign affairs columnist for McClatchy News and a visiting fellow at the Hoover Institute. He joins me now from San Francisco to discuss this. Okay, Markos, so the White House is downplaying this threat, saying that they expected it. Well, if that's the case, then what's the North Korea trying to angle for at this point?
Hi, Reena. I think what you're looking at is Kim Jong-un, who has clearly understood the lessons of the book, The Art of the Deal. And I'm sure, like many leaders, has probably gone to that book and figured out, well, what is the way to negotiate with Donald Trump? He is using all those tools. In particular, he understands that he has leverage in this negotiation. Nuclear weapons are the great equalizer in every negotiation that has to do with arms control. If you've got them, you are essentially at parity with any superpower or great nation that also has them, because it is the one thing that you can hold on to and guarantee your regime's survival.
So is Kim Jong-un just trying to raise the bar here to say we're not going to give up all of our nukes that we've worked decades to try and build this program? What do you think he wants to come out of this ahead of the summit?
Well, I think the security guarantees are absolutely what he needs. He wants to survive. He wants his regime to survive. So giving up nuclear weapons is not the way to do that. We know that as a fact. I wrote a piece for McClatchy not too long ago that said nuclear deals are for suckers, because we know, and the world is so familiar with the types of events that occur when people give up their weapons of mass destruction. We saw what happened in Libya with Colonel Gaddafi, something that John Bolton recently pointed out and reminded Kim Jong-un of. And we saw what can happen if a deal is made with Iran. So it is no question for Kim Jong-un. He has spent so much of that state's capital, so much of its treasury to develop these weapons. It is something he wants to hold on to. He may be willing to make a deal, but that deal better be Loctite, secure, and he has to be personally sure that there will be enough guarantees on an international basis, whether from his neighboring state of China, that the United States will adhere to that particular deal if it is made.
It was National Security Advisor John Bolton who suggested try to use the Libya model for Kim Jong-un in North Korea. We know that Gaddafi was overthrown, later killed. Does that analogy work with someone like Kim Jong-un?
Well, there are some differences, but there's no question that anybody who's sitting and looking at how do you make a deal with the United States or the international community is going to be very well familiar with that particular case. Here's the difference, though. Kim Jong-un has China next door. He's made 2 trips to visit Xi Jinping, the president of China, in the last 2 months. I am certain that if there is going to be some level of guarantee for his survival, for his state, and for a means for China to actually be dominant within that region, China will have to be a significant player within any negotiation and perhaps guarantee Kim Jong-un's survival. So here's the thing that we have to really be aware of and conscious of throughout all of these negotiations. China is a player. Now, we should ask ourselves, has this new deal, trade deal, the ZTE, the telephone deal that the president has talked about, is that a part of this negotiation? Is the president making trade concessions to try and get China to move Kim Jong-un towards a reasonable negotiation where he can denuclearize the Korean Peninsula?
I was going to ask you about China in particular. Do you think that maybe the Chinese, they've had 2 meetings with Kim Jong-un where he's actually traveled and gone to China, something he hasn't done before. Do you think that the Chinese are perhaps whispering in his ear, or do you feel, as you mentioned at the top, that maybe he's just reading this book, The Art of the Deal, and trying to find plays from that?
I think the Chinese are significant players in this. They are the regional dominant power. They are a great power. And things are shifting in Asia, whether it's Northeast Asia or Southeast Asia. And North Korea is a part of it. They have essentially been, in many ways, a proxy for the Chinese. So if the Chinese are using or negotiating or dealing with the North Koreans, that should not be surprising to anyone in Washington, D.C. So the Chinese have very specific interests, and part of their interests right now, as the president becomes more belligerent regarding trade, for example, is that they want to create wedges between the United States and its allies. A wedge between the United States and South Korea, a wedge between the United States and Japan, a wedge wherever they can in that region. And North Korea is one of those pawns within this play.
How do you see this all going down as we're leading up to the summit? Do you think it's going to happen?
You know, it's. I think it's going to be moving in that direction. The president clearly wants it to go in that direction. I think Kim Jong-un will, after he plays his hand, figure that it's more likely that it's worth his time to go there. But the question then becomes: can Donald Trump actually make a deal? He has really been, since he's come into office, a deal breaker, not a deal maker. So this would be the real first test of whether or not he can negotiate something. We've seen that he's only been able to break the deal on the nuclear deal with Iran. He's broken the trade deal with Asia in TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Here's something that has to be constructive. And so how does he put this thing together, and what does he give up in the process? Because Kim Jong-un is not going to give up his survival just to sign a piece of paper.
Markos Kounalakis, thank you, Markos, for joining us.
Thank you, Reena.